Alex Answer here. It is January 11th in the year 2019. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting this channel. Here in Southern Colorado, we have gone through several snowstorms, and I was snowed in for a few days. It was really great to get out yesterday. Hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoy recording outside the studio in the home base, as well as doing most of my content here, but I like to change things up. So I have additional perspectives and ideas and insight. I very much am affected, for positive, for better, or for worse, when I reside in different environments. And there was a lot of things that I learned in Portland, Oregon, the city of my birth. Several years after leaving Portland, first in 2011, and then finally for good in 2015, though I still think about some friends in Portland, but I think the region's going to be facing some major dangers in the future. And I think that the protests that you're seeing now that didn't take place when I lived there is verification and validation that some of the things that I was worrying about were legit back in the day. The federalization of local police, here we are now in the JTTF. And I've actually had to apply a certain amount of focus and intent to be able to let go of certain things. Also, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of testosterone, but we can also get spun by our own energy and focus. Some could call it ego. Some could call it the element of the hero archetype, for better or for worse. People have different perspectives on that, but that seems to be in our biology as well. We can end up wasting our time and energy investing in the hero archetype when it's towards something or a group that isn't worthy of, or when it's directed towards holding up the civilization that's already on its way out. So if you want to get deep into the true gnosis or spirituality or Christ consciousness or the light side of Norse mythology, which is there, and things that involve the ancient religions of the sun, without the human sacrifice, by the way, right? But there are beautiful things about this world, the Middle East, Europe, this continent, like the ancient world before the modern structures. And a lot of the modern structures, right, are controlled by them. And there are so many books. With regards to my own book collection, I let books come to me. We're going to be talking about books for a little bit today. I have this unusual experience. Now, even though to a certain degree, I feel like I have some elements of lack, really, my world is rich in abundance, perceiving it from another dimension of reality, outside the box of monetary wealth, outside the box of certain things, social status, things like that, peer pressure group, thumbs up, things of that nature. Where I come from when it comes to soul success, which is the only success that I'm interested in reality, because we could spend our whole life, right, aiming for the monetary success and the success of being looked at fondly by our peers or by women, or if you're a woman, by men, right? There's just that element of our biology that wants to impress those of the fallen world, right? And I'm here to remind you, there is a purpose in your own life in seeking something higher, right? You can go about your world being respectful to the best of your ability to your parents, to your coworkers, to your bosses, to your teachers. But in no way, shape, or form should you let people imprint their mind into your mind and your reality. There is an art to being an independent voice of reason. There is an art to all of this. So I am attempting some new things here, as well as, let's take a look at the books. Some plans for 2019. So we will be getting not only into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, right? I'll be reading a little bit more about an ancestor of mine. And during that period in which Rumi was growing and expanding, and in its own golden years, some very information from the East was pen to paper. At the same time, as I mentioned in a previous video, the ancient Puebloan Indians, as well as the Hopi, the ancients, of course, go back a little bit further. But if we were to look at, say, the 10th century or 9th century to the 12th century or 13th century, and that period when we started to go into the Mandarin minimum or Ice Age, or the Grand Solar minimum for that time period, We literally saw an explosion in ideas and then a decline. These things are cyclical. There are periods in which there is, for whatever reason, an abundance of spiritual teachers, thinkers, and we in this world, including myself, make the mistake of falling in duality and forgetting the yin and the yang, or the yin and the yang. We may make a objective or less than objective statement that the world's going one way or the other when there's multiple things taking place at once. Multiple things are taking place at once in this fallen world. So some people are getting sicker and some people are waking up. It's a lot more complex than whether the whole world's waking up, like that collective mindset. There are elements of doing things on a collective level. I understand that. Certain consensus agreements. That's why people have governments and walls, love them or hate them, and things of that nature. That comes about from consensus realities, right? We need to see in response, we could be looking at, the fires of nuclear war or something else. Hopefully that won't happen. It's more likely that we're dealing with some sort of a conflict. I'm not concerned or convinced that it's going to be nukes. There's all kinds of technologies that can be used to take out the grid and bring people to their knees to the new government without polluting anything. Keep that in mind. But out of the ashes of what will be, including the potential of a solar event, we're going to read Arrow to the Sun. I believe it was published in 1974, or at least this was. Maybe the story, of course, goes back even further. But I've said for years that if the sun was to interrupt our civilization, all of a sudden you would see people talking to each other again. And even with the propaganda that's out there. Now, a person can't unhear something once they've heard it. There's a positive and negative repercussion of that. So some people, especially today, because the grid's still up, are still damaged psychologically from the fake Sharia law news invasion of several years ago, to the point where, and with the border stuff now, and I was in the next town over, there was a lot more apprehension that I sensed from other people in the street with regards to me. One woman actually, to the degree, she crossed the street when seeing me. There's a certain town, this region, mostly white, mostly prosperous, and very low income Native American tribes around them, and a history of resentment. It can be kind of a tough climate to walk through. I've done enough traveling now in America to realize there's some places where they don't have those heavy dominant thought forms of tension and competition or racial tension. There are some places where you can cut the racial tension in the air with a knife. This is true. This is true. Okay. And this isn't attacking anyone by saying that. And there are some people that are like apprehensive because some people have been straight up robbed at the ATM at knife point. And some people have explained this to me as well. There's things that are happening. Actually, Colorado Springs is another town. I don't go there, but it's been described to Chicago because of the increase in murder rates. There's also a lot of biker gangs that kind of centralize and other types of gangs and some things that connect to prison that are in and around Denver and Colorado Springs. Basically, we're seeing a rise in the dark side. And I didn't get a chance to see the old Colorado before, the current one. There's a lot of tensions here. For example, no place is an island. I used to scream that through a megaphone in Portland. Neither is Colorado, where a lot of people are rushing to. Some people with deep psychological problems, emotional, financial, and or other. So it makes up a melting pot, if you will, of all these people that have basically fled where they came. Many people from California. Many, that's the dominant, as well as Texas. And it's interesting how just by like a small region going one way or the other, oh yeah, nearly all Californian. You go over here a few hours, oh yeah, nearly all Texan. You go over here a little bit, and now we have the Southerners. You look for the Oregonians, and you'll just find me. But if you are somebody from Oregon, whether watching this now or in Colorado, feel free to say hi. So it's important that we find ways not only to not let this world break us, but when we're faced with these absolute, And we're talking about a crisis in consciousness, not only in a crisis with regards to our economy and geopolitics, but a crisis in consciousness. That there can be all the fuel that we really need to wake up. And I don't necessarily mean a literal sense, get down on our knees and pray. In another sense, maybe get into a lotus position and breathe. Although there are some meditation teachers, that deal with flushing out old energy, bringing in the earth and cosmic energy. Like my friend Leon and his course that I took, a lot of them recommend putting the feet flat on the ground, right? So where the balls of the feet are flat on the ground, and of course for best results on the actual earth. Instead of being a lotus position, bringing up the energy through the balls of the feet, right? Up to the kneecaps, through the legs, down to the hips, to the root chakra, and then down the grounding cord to the center of the earth. Repeat that looping energy. First, get your grounding cord. First, get in your body. A lot of us are out of body, all over the place. First bring in your own energy through a gold sun. I've talked about this in a previous video. And once someone's grounded, bring in that earth energy. Then bring in the cosmic energy through the crown chakra, down the back to the root, and then up the front. Right, where you have both working together. There's variants of this. And I think there's more than one way to do this. There's more than one way to put up an energy shield. There's more than one way to maintain it. There may be some types of meditations that are taught that could be a little bit incomplete. It's not one size fits all. Your soul and or my soul may have a history of mastering or practicing certain types of meditations throughout the lifetimes. So there could be soul memory with regards to the value in different types of things. For example, there's a value in deep breathing, and then there's a value in, of course, just breathing naturally while spending most of your cognitive functions on grounding and clearing out your body itself, moving the energy, flushing out the energy, and then bringing in through a gold sun or some other means elements of your own energy that's out there in the universe that somehow is out of body, or maybe energy that was lost somehow, some way, or spent. So think about these things. Think about these things and think about those principles. And then start to look at how the media acts in a way to pump up all these false images that shouldn't be in our mind to begin with. On VHX soon, I will be elaborating more on an element of a tool that follows up after those basic tools regarding clearing out the mind space, clearing out those images. There's a previous video which I did when I was in New Mexico, and I really felt the spirit, the strong earth spirit at that moment. And so outside I did one of the only outdoor meditation dialogues. Not so much a guided meditation, but a discussion regarding these techniques. And it went on for about 45 minutes. And in the future, I'm going to add visuals. So I'll start with a video on VHX now that I've already done a few for everyone on YouTube. And we'll polish, if you will, the presentation. So it's as clear as possible. Because if you think you're a target individual or suffering from psychic attack or spiritual warfare or just a propaganda matrix, there's certain things that we need to do that's akin to taking a shower or cleaning ourselves off, right? Or brushing our own teeth or eating food. All these things deal with moving energy, cleaning, bringing in new energy, also releasing energy. And so the same like dynamics of the physical world are taking place in the spiritual world. But if we're not paying attention to our spiritual self or our etheric self, then the gunk that can build up can affect us on the physical. And by the way, that's also where physical disease can come from. It's not the only place that physical disease comes from. I don't take it to such a literal way that all disease is a product of an imbalance in the spirit, mind, or body, spirit, soul. But it can contribute. Hey, someone that does horrible things to others, unfortunately, and think about the mercenaries of this world, think about the military has been misused, and think about how these things can affect our nation. Now, that's a macrocosm. What does that look like on the individual level? If you're going to run with the devil, there are consequences. And that's a pretty strong truth within a barrage or sea of truths that needs to be said today. And again, there are people out there that are running with the devil, or letting the devil, if you will, the archons of this world, and you can take this metaphorically, their lower self. And when people do that for greed, whether it be for a YouTube channel or for products, there's a price they pay, whether they're going to pay that now or pay that later. The idea of heaven or hell, these are like realms of reality that exist. So it isn't exactly like what's been described from some of the religions, but in some cases, it could include. And why not? We live in a world where there's parallel realities, and realities within this one, virtual realities. So, I mean, think about this very carefully. And also, right, as you find out about the world of modern day cloning, take a look at what Chinese scientists have created. That's mankind. That's modern science, as primitive as it is. Terraforming and playing with the creation of human life. Shocking scientists around the world, playing God, basically. How can this go wrong? And it's China. In a couple of years, they're going to declare themselves the head of the new world order. Now, we've already been talking about clone armies for years. I mentioned recently there could be the possibility, but I mentioned this years ago as well, that North Korea is creating its own underground clone army as we speak. They also more than likely have their own versions of the T-1000 as depicted in the original Terminator movie. I don't know about the T-2000 as depicted in Terminator 2, let alone the others. But the robot apocalypse could be seen as a metaphor for the alien invasion. Keep that in mind. And the alien invasion in a physical form and the robot apocalypse in a physical form is still an allegory potentially and a metaphor for the invasion of human consciousness that's already taken place. Because I would argue it's not so much the spacecrafts coming in, although I would suspect some of that stuff would be played up by our own government to create fear and get the population to worship the government as the government acts like it's going to save the people from the aliens. Project Bluebeam, for example. But the ultimate alien invasion, folks, has already taken place. And a lot of these racial supremacy programs ultimately come from the ETs that in their own way have an agenda in what the humans look like in 100 years. It's them that have the interest. It's not you or me. You're going to be gone, and I'm going to be gone, unless you think you're going to be getting life extension technology. So why would an Alex Jones individual act like he's possessed? Because they're not doing this for own ethnicity, right? They're making America look bad. But why are they doing it? Who are they working for? And they're not just working for government agencies. The devils of this world that are speaking in these devil tongues regarding the illusions of separation. They're serving the alien agenda. They are the archonic mind hijack. They are the evidence of the archons in our world. So we're going to come back to that again. Right now we're running off battery power after I have the generator on for a little bit. So hopefully these lights will stay on. We are going to get into arrow to the sun. If we have a micro blackout, if you will, we'll go ahead and hit stop, and I'll come back with more. So let me talk about this. Because as an introduction, when I go to, and this was actually painted by Angelus, who helped design Ancestry.tv and helps with some things behind the scenes. Bill Gorman has a few art pieces up here as well. And so in these dark ages, we need to bring color into our world. And that's not a multicultural conspiracy like code word. I mean, like color. Like it's the winter right now. It's gray. It's cold. And then you look at the news wire, and it is some dark stuff. It is some pale stuff. It is some ugly, ugly, ugly stuff. There's like a lack of life and vigor with regards to the news wire. It's like everything is maybe on the potential of catastrophe. Hey, people are offing themselves at an all-time high. Hey, let's just act confused about America's opiate crisis. Hey, let's ignore people that got over their own problems in the late 90s and started their own YouTube channels. Let's ignore right? The real small content creators, let's just keep spinning in this alternative matrix as people act like they're looking for solutions and they're looking to collect massive taxpayer dollars to build up big government while they don't even hire people that are qualified of a true open-hearted, empathetic response to what people are going through. Because we had the system that like, well, Rush, oh my God, all these things are happening to these people, drug addictions and offing themselves and homelessness. Hey, I got an idea. Let's like take way more money from the people to like put it more in these organizations. And it just ends up in a black hole. The answer is community. Now, when people say the churches, for example, with response to if there's a food stamp shutdown, that is as irresponsible as calling for welfare for all. Get real. The churches don't have enough for all. And I've actually visited churches in the local area and talked a little bit about some of the things that I feel, ways in which I've been isolated and why. Modern politics, I've like opened up my heart with people in the community that go to church. I haven't seen anybody really care. And you guys are Christians, and you guys don't understand what I'm discussing regarding the illusions of separation and how recent political events can cause some people to kind of feel a certain way, feel super left out, feel in danger. You don't understand that. Oh, and you're Christians. Not buying it. Not buying it at all, or their version of Christianity. I believe there could be a true Christian, and then there's like what most people do. And they go to church to, maintain appearance. The main point is, from what I've seen over the years, even back in the day, there's no way there would be even fairness from these individuals with regarding to you get this, you get this. There's no way. There's no way. A lot of people bring their tribalism to them, to their churches. And it's really like a club thing. It's just irresponsible to think that now community itself that transcends government, that transcends churches. That's a solution. But how do communities prepare for wildfires, economic collapses, or things of that nature when they're divided from within after multiple years on Facebook? The damage has been done. You may not believe that. You may not agree, and that's okay. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here to share with you the Alex Answer, outside the box truth of the day. Like Count Dracula, today, our truth letter. Ho, ho, ho. We are going into ignorance. Ignorance that the people have been divided by social media. Ho, ho, ho. Actually, Count, uh, the character from Sesame Street, I think it was more numbers, right? So in this case, it's like, yeah, then how many more years will it take until people get it? That they've been had, that there was like a pointlessness to all of the strife of this period. Will future generations get it, or will the history books be so perverted that most of the future generations won't even get it, but only maybe a pocket? Who knows? There could be a big spiritual movement in the distant future that will come about from information that was data mined and preserved that somehow survived the event. See, it's not me like hoping that mankind goes down, but hoping to see mankind's rise again. And mankind can rise with an explosive solar cycle if mankind was set free from those darker forces that have been dependent on Earth being a certain way for a certain amount of time. It's only been in recent years that we've had this massive grid. But the sun, right, no matter what, it continues its cycle, and it'll spit out those massive plasma balls of energy. We could see, events like the Carotene event 1859 repeat in the future. But if that would happen, right, instantaneous communication is going down. Yes, there would be massive starvation, and that would be unfortunate. But what type of natural things could come about in a reality to where, right, with internet communication being down and all of this centralization, all cell phones being down and everything being face to face? So instantaneously, things would become super dangerous in certain areas without a grid, but also people would no longer be staring into the flat screen. Things would be getting a lot more real. People would be talking more. And once people start talking more and maybe have their first community meeting in 25 years, 30 years, think about it, folks, 35 years, 40 years. And all these years, they were divided over politics and divided over things that were manufactured in DC, where the elite already controlled through its hidden hand both sides. Now, that's mind control when you have people in deep rural communities that have only had the cell phone for 10 or 15 years, brainwashed by that to where their predecessors 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even though America has a reputation of being super racist, au contraire. You turn the pages of time back to the time of my father and his travels through the United States, through Kentucky, rolling around with girls in the hay in 1968 in Kentucky, listening to Bob Dylan with his friends, with his American friends. He experienced a different reality because the America at that time in 1968, where he actually came over in 67 when he was 17. That was an amazing time, by the way, to be alive. And segue that I want to start reading people that lived through, and I understand that there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be alive in 10 years. By the time maybe even the war starts. Maybe they're not meant to be around to see it. But there was a real boom period between the 1950s and the 2000s. Now, a lot of it came from fiat. We all know that, the Federal Reserve. But there was a lot of elbow room and opportunity for people to do their thing. People to put on pretty dresses. People to have their first CD player. We literally all came very quickly from the caves and from the wagon. I mean, seriously. And from the age of the mountain men that would eventually go down and build their cities. Yeah, some of us would retreat from the cities back up to the mountain, and we'd go backwards. I'm like a backward version of the Oregon Trail. And by the way, on my mother's side, natural-born Oregonian, I go back 5 generations. So I have Southerners on my grandmother's side that were involved in whatever back in the day. And a lot of people were in the 1830s. People that were in the South. There's a lot of things that I never learned about the full ancestry, other than the Germanic, Austrian, and Welsh bloodlines. There was a 1-hour interview that I did with my grandmother, Ruth Nagel, and she, before it was married, it was Lewis. She had a lot of interesting information that she was able to retain regarding her parents. And I'm not sure if it was Georgia, I'm not sure where in the South, before she came to Oregon and met my grandfather, Bill Nagel of Nagel Floor Covering of Aurora, Oregon. I think that was established in the 60s. Anyway, I learned a lot about this, not only from just basic history, but the story of my grandparents and the story of the people of the generation of my parents, even some people that aren't family but are like family that lived in that rough and tumble generation of, say, old Portland in the 1970s and 80s, like my old friend, right? They kind of helped me see that previous generation from a deeper perspective than most people my age. I felt privileged in one sense, and only in one sense, as a young man. But there was somewhat of a mentor in my life. I've mentioned him. That's one of the most positive things that I can mention about my life, period, is that there was some level of foundation that a person that was not my father during years in which I didn't have a father made sure that I knew how to throw a punch. Made sure that I understand certain things like, there's a period in which I worked and there needed to be some taxes paid. He tried to steer me in the right direction, even if I didn't want to do that, and file and other things. And he also, made some mistakes himself, and I think wanted to steer me in the right direction so I didn't make some of the same mistakes or mistakes that he saw others make in the 1970s and 1980s. There was a period of tough love, for example. When I started doing dumb things in the late 1990s, it was like, dude, you made your bed, you sleep in it. Goodbye. I got to deal with my stuff. Good luck. I don't blame him for that. And so there was a period in which I knew what it was like to be all alone again. And then I also knew what it was like to build myself up from what felt like ashes. Like I reached a bottom from this state of hopelessness after both my parents also left West Coast for East Coast independently. They divorced when I was born. Again, my life story some other time. In the distant future, maybe, when I'm 60. Or in a few years. But as I get older, more likely a few years. The goal, of course, is as much forgiveness as possible. So those people that I may have held a resentment against. because I understand the larger picture and that we don't live on this world forever. And hopefully some of us will return to where we came. I was born during a solar maximum year, and I began to speculate in recent years about a number of things regarding the sun, and a lot of it started literally like in and around the 29th birthday, which is also a period that signifies the beginning of a Saturn return, which is an astrological influence. It's kind of like a midlife crisis, where things come up for reevaluation, things that need to change. Not everybody's aware of that. And I am super sensitive, and in Portland felt that there was something big that was coming into my world that was changing things. Little did I know that in a few years it would bring the end to me being a cable access host in Portland, Oregon on primetime. I literally lost a primetime slot, though, as early as 2009, got pushed to Sundays when they closed Thursdays. So I lost a big chunk of my audience. I think there was an element of myself. Arrogant is a strong word. Overconfident on some others. There was definitely a sense of almost euphoria, though, after years of going through a lot of pain and challenge. 9/11 was an event that really shook me, along with the other events and things that I went through, along with coming out of the ashes. In the aftermath of 9/11, that was a high intensity period for our planet. So the seeds were planted early, including the cycles of the sun, because that was a high point for solar activity. And some say the overall solar ambient radiation has been reducing since 1998, and that may be the case. What I more or less focus on isn't the overall solar ambient radiation, or the strength of the heliosphere, or the solar minimum. It's how those independent flashes or shock waves of solar activity, even during a minimum, affect human consciousness, affects the pineal gland, affects hormone levels. And on the real world, in the streets, we see the statistics of the drive-by shootings and the sexual assaults. And we see on the geopolitical events, the wars, but we see also within our communities and within our own minds, spiritual breakthroughs. So it's not completely dark, right? But it is for some people. That energy that can come through, that can almost create the circumstances for some people to become possessed by demons, archons, jinn, or negative spirits. But for others, especially when they're mindful of it, some of them aren't even mindful of it, but they're already in a positive space and moving forward. They could be having bigger lifts at the gym. They could be having deeper insights in their writing. As a ballerina, they could be having deeper spins and moves of their leg, and all of a sudden, for the very first time, everything is coming together. With regards to martial arts, they may realize that their reaction time and speed is at a level that, I think also Neo from the Matrix and some of those, scenes of the simulation of going beyond a state of limitation. It's almost as if that power of the sun can also help to a certain degree with that manifestation. Some people are manifesting evil. Some people are manifesting good. What they do with the creative power of the sun is up to them, but there are consequences. So there are some that have chosen to covet knowledge, control populations, and promote human sacrifice. And your government today, if you're in a Western country, is still doing it. It's also still using certain symbols from the past. It doesn't mean that those symbols are evil. It doesn't mean that ancient religions of the sun that may have used those symbols are also the Illuminati or New World Order. But rather, societies that use particular symbols that in this world of magic on Earth, certain symbols have power. The swastika and that symbol had a different meaning before the time of Nazi Germany. After the time of Nazi Germany, that symbol has taken on a particular overtone. Despite all the good that came before 1930 with regards to that symbol. Now think about how modern peoples are demonized. When they're able to go in, maybe take over religion, maybe even send in a few people, and they can manufacture certain events so it looks like a certain religion is going on the massive attack at once. But what if the whole thing's controlled? Could then the whole world be turned against an entire ethnicity or an entire group in order for the fallen one to have his human sacrifice? Again, I would say that you step back and take another look at the world events that are taking place. It's not spiritual. It's not to defend your people, not even your ethnicity. In fact, you're being set up. If you're going along with the illusions of separation, you're being set up. And you can quote me on that. And I will take pride in being one of the few on the planet, let alone YouTube, that says statements like that. I think it's kind of weird. And at times I get really depressed because the last I checked years ago, we were at 7 billion. And in the past, I would say, tell me who my brothers and sisters are. Other people on YouTube that say something similar. No one says anything. They say, oh, they talk about the archons. Yeah, but do they talk about the archons and the calling overseas? Or do they just make jokes and giggles about their theories on ufology and how it may work out? It's really beyond me how some people have the gall to say that they can talk about the unseen realms and not talk about the massive human sacrifice. In fact, many people like John Lash do the bait and switch. And so they'll start talking about the archons and they'll bait and switch and then talk about the events in Europe, immigration, and say that's the archons. Those people across the walls in the Lord of the Rings scenario are the archons. So there's a deception with regards to how these people present the archons. So anytime someone tries to come and invade or hurt, yes, that's evil. But if you have, on a higher order, entire civilizations spawn back to the Stone Age, society is destabilized, and then by design, pushed into certain areas so there's animosity from the other group that builds not over a few years, but over a few decades to where their children will be groomed and bred to hate the other race. Now that's a sickness, but that's a sickness that we're walking into. The younger generation, including especially those that were born around 9/11, very few of them are involved in any truth movement. Most of them were scarred by the events of 9/11 and within their own biology. And you don't even have to call it racist. Just a biological imperative bred into society to hate a particular group of people. Having experienced life in this body, I've experienced more things that will be said on this channel and are best suited for a book to be read by future generations because of the high level of sensitivity and lack of tolerance from both the left and the right. And it literally now has gotten to the point where I can't say one is worse than the other. I've reached this point, this quickening point. I've experienced rural conservative Colorado, and I've experienced populated leftist, or not so much overt Trump support, but just your average supposed multicultural, open, diverse city, so-called, per se. And looking at it and stepping back again, I'm not a fan of the current political process, but rural America, despite the isolation, if I can get over that, and I think that I obviously have been going through that for multiple years. But rural America, even rural conservative America, has certain pluses, not to mention the space that I have from the zombie apocalypse, that the urban leftist environments cannot offer me. The leftist urban environments, it's like one big encouragement to drink oneself to death, even if they're not even a drinker, but maybe to become one. And that's pretty psycho. There's way more of an inclination, by the way, in Portland to maybe, I don't know, go to a strip club or have a beer or to get involved in promiscuous sex, random hookups. And I felt that when I got away from that ley line, where there's a higher concentration of demons or archons and or earthbound spirits from old Portland, the old Shanghai days, there's a lot of earthbound spirits in all of these modern cities that plague sensitive beings today. And so, speaking about these things for years, I decided to put my money where my mouth was, especially talking about the Shanghai tunnels and the lost, fallen spirit energy of Portland, and especially slave energy. Master-slave consciousness seemed really strong there. And having traveled now, I realized, unfortunately, that's the blueprint of the world. As I said before, the illusions of separation and racism is not limited to European countries. Take a look at the Indian caste system. And they literally have it built in. Now, when you start seeing, though, right, evidence of this fallen world's caste system based on skin tone that transcends the United States and transcends you being blamed, then you need to have the maturity in adulthood and spiritual growth to drop the defensiveness. And take a look at a sea of injustice over thousands of years. Sometimes it happening to lighter skin, sometimes it happening to darker skin in different places on the world. It's not about necessarily, in the end, one ethnicity over another, but it's being played off against each other by the archons. There may have been beings in the beginning that made different forms of life, maybe at core 7 or 12. And so it's believed that there are different perceptions of races or ethnicities because of the different beings that came down. Again, these are mythologies, but these same mythologies can also be used, especially if there's some truth in that, especially if there's like a war of the gods taking place multidimensionally. And if these are fallen ones, and we're more or less their genetic experiment to evolve beyond their world, should we go along with their race war as they try to feud in their family feud? Or should we evolve beyond it? There's also a primitive reason why some women really want a giant. It almost seems unnatural. And some giants really want a little girl. Take a look at the real world out there. There's actually reasons why some of that's built in to the body. Right? And there's so much aggressiveness regarding sexuality and how people get off. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to judge us. I'm here to say that my higher self can look at the nature of biology, what turns on humans the most, as opposed to the kind things, the loving things. And I'm like, it's almost as if there's spirits that are thrust into these genetically engineered. It's almost as if we are the monsters in reality from Lord of the Rings. Not so much the, oh, look at them, they're so beautiful with their elf ears. All the beautiful, but when we look at it, even if people are beautiful on the outside, on the inside, do they have that beautiful goddess spirit going on? Or is she herself showing like an ogre or an orc? And we look at the lack of compassion for the victims of war. I see physically sexy bodies, but in spirit, I see orcs. In spirit, it's reptilian. There's a lot of and not all reptilian or snake energy seems to be evil if we go back far enough before the church manipulated it and made the serpent completely evil all the time. So it's not all one way, nor is one race one way, nor is one series of letters like 6 or 3 or 9 all evil. These are superstitions. That's why I'm toying around with it lately. But there is like literally a synchronicity to numbers 3s and 1s. And I've always seen it. You've heard on Coast to Coast people looking up at the clock and going 111 or 333. Like, that's not a conspiracy theory. Hate to break it to you, sunshine. But like becoming aware of 33 or 333 or 1111 or 911 when that's reversed, or 3113 319, all these different things, it blows the mind. There is like, some people say Fibonacci sequence. It could be something even more simple than that, or it could include that. Haven't officially studied the Fibonacci sequence. The only conspiracy in that would be, whoa, we can see the actual mathematics of the matrix itself. Just like there's a hexagram, by the way, you can see the hidden messages in water, the 6-sided shape. Well, just because the Zionists in Israel have their Star of David and they've used that for wrong, it doesn't then mean that there isn't a mathematical element of a 6-sided shape. It's like, I was at a bookstore where I picked up these books, and there's Tex Mars's, and I don't deal with any of his content anymore. I was naive back in the day, in my early days in the conspiracy stuff. With him, it's just the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. The book is titled The Conspiracy of the 6-Sided Star. Is that all it is a conspiracy? What about the hidden messages in water, where those people meditated and prayed, I love you, to the water molecule, right? And then it came out in that crystalline shape, 6-sided. You can literally fit in the Star of David within that. That's another example, like the Nazis. Ooh, and watch how the creation of Israel followed Nazi Germany. Some could say it's really the same entity. Anyways, or at least connected. You don't necessarily have to blame all the people that were relocated or have been brainwashed to do their settlement expansion. You don't need to hate the Jews necessarily because of what's happened to Palestinians, but they are being treated as subhumans, and I don't agree with that. But I also don't agree with then treating the others the same, right? I think that the universe is going to be dealing with a lot of these souls based on their actions, and keep that in check, keep that in mind. And a lot of things, right, aren't going to be cleared out on the soul level till someone leaves this world. So a lot of people, right, you may see them do really well financially or with numbers and hits on YouTube. Let go of the ego competition side, because everything we have to pay for in this life. So there's going to be some people for the rest of their lives, they are going to be rewarded monetarily for being evil son of a bitches. Illusions of separation, promoting genocide. These are the things that can make you a millionaire in today's day and age if you know what you're doing. Take a look at those people that are acting like they're victims on YouTube. They're making enough to get a second home. I don't think that they know what it's like to be a victim at this point with that level of monetary reward through what it is that drives them. And it really comes down to that. What drives them? What's the overall theme or thesis with a lot of these people in their channels? Can it be summed up into one handwritten page? What they stand for and who they stand against. And then you can ask other questions. Are they warning about what's coming with China? Are they actually giving their own peoples, right, adequate solutions and survival information that can enhance their lives and their family? Or is it all based in externalization? Can they find a way to blame immigrants for a meal that they burned in the oven? We don't know, but we may get to see that in 10 years. All these jobs have been outsourced to this place in Pakistan where they make all of the smart ovens. And those people that just aren't as good as you, they've been given your jobs, and now your ovens are blowing up because of them. And like we literally are at these levels to where people aren't going, well, who really controls things at the very top? The weapons, the immigration, the currencies, the travel of bodies from back and forth. People don't take it that far. And when they do, they easily blame it on one party without really knowing what's going on, without really knowing how Trump and Schumer can maybe work together behind the scenes and say, you're going to do this. Now I'm going to do this like wrestling. Now when I go high, you need to drop. Otherwise, I'm going to knock you in your teeth. But you're going to act like I knocked you in your teeth, and the crowd's going to go wild, and the crowd's going to go wild. And after my recent monologue where I went over this, what do I see immediately popping up on the news? Trump walks out of meeting. So both the Democrats and Republicans are acting like you have Schumer and Pelosi over here, and then we have Trump over here, and he's acting all calm, and we want to do national security. He does a speech, and they come out and say, "But yeah, no way, no money for the wall." And then Trump does a walkout, so you have like a repeat, and the people are watching this going, "Whoa, it's like it's real, wow." So then the real divide is those that believe those people are actors, and those people that are asleep, that are brainwashed, that have no clue they're working together to destroy us from within. That's the dividing consciousness. There are those of you that get it. Thank you, thumbs up. There are those that don't understand the fundamental dynamics of controlling both sides. So we're going to probably get into reading these things in another video, right? I want to keep this kind of in a free flow. The healing energy of your hands. Got this at the Goodwill for $2. Living the martial way. It's the spiritual side of the martial arts that people are never taught in the UFC or MMA. I'm going to be looking at that. This gets into the theme of me seeking out information and the information finding me. I want to find a good book on that for a while. The Medicine Way. A Shamanic Path to Self-Mastery. The other book that I have that's upstairs is called Prehistoric Indians of the Four Corners, written in 1963, I believe. So it has a concentration of information about the Hopi in Arizona, in New Mexico, that would be Chaco Canyon, Utah, and the Four Corners. And we have Arrow to the Sun, which is a Pueblo Indian tale. Let me take a deep breath and actually conclude this video with this. Having said everything that I said, and in past videos about the sun, and it's that ball of life. Of course, now we're inundated with people that want to guilt trip us for like questioning our reality and not necessarily letting them, right? How could you respect, or anyone respect, someone that just believes what anyone on the internet wants them to believe? Why would there be such a peer pressure built in, and for it to seem like it's organic, like there's an organic waking up to the fact that the sun is a light bulb and the earth is not what you think? Out of all the different things to really question in this world regarding what is real versus what is false. And even within that paradigm of flat earth, then why don't the flat earthers then go at the same time, in the same breath, also on this flat earth? Why are they then doing this? Or why are they then killing millions of people? It doesn't go anywhere beyond a Pac-Man scenario of going one side and coming the other. They don't then go, well, then could this be holographic reality that's part of the fallen world that could be tied to the... No. Just keep it here in the Pac-Man. Going over here, over here. And that's where the alarm bells within, for anyone that's actually intuitive and not already zombified by the lower self, by the herd collective of the false truth movement, the false woke people. That's almost code for those people that are actually not really awake. The ones that call themselves woke. It's like code for the counterfeit, right? They might as well be doing this a bunch of times, right? And what is this anyway? Does it mean the one-eyed reptilian? Does it mean the Illuminati? Why does Trump do this? Why do people that for years, right, would show up signs of the devil horns like Alex Jones and then do it themselves? It's in plain sight. They can completely be a completely different 180, a completely different person around the time of 9/11. People like Alex Jones. And they can literally be completely on the other side in the year 2019. Why would that be done in plain sight? Maybe to, on a level, give the people an option, show them in plain sight, right? Look, we control this guy. He'll literally say this out of one side of his mouth, and many years later, he'll be saying something else. Some people would be so brainwashed and naive, they wouldn't realize the bait and switch, or they would come in later and not air check the old Alex Jones. They would just eat the products of the current Alex Jones without maybe comparing his old broadcasts to the current and going, it's the same guy yelling and foaming at the mouth, but he's not saying the same thing. You could find a video where he's literally torturing an iPad and saying he's trying to make a statement to the world that the people don't give a damn about Afghanis and Iraqis being tortured. He did that. 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 He screamed. He jumped up and down. He said Americans were zombies. They don't care about Afghanis and Iraqis being tortured. He did that. Now, they were at that time, and that was the same time period. It was actually a few years after the pictures came out of the woman standing over the naked Arab. Now, why do they have the white woman standing over the naked Arab who is treated like a dog? And how does this remind us of the videos where they made sure they had the white women in the pictures where they had the black men lynched? Because there was a time, if you know your early feminism history and the ties to white woman supremacy. That's right. Because the first wave of feminism was not about racial equality. It was about the white woman having hers in the world of white supremacy. Today, there's actually splits within the box of feminism. And so maybe if I was a woman that was actually more actively involved in feminism, maybe some of you should speak up. I would be more aware of the splits and the racial tensions. The real version, right, of women's freedom versus the false one. Now, that I understand. That my soul seems to understand. There is a world in which women really are free and really do speak their mind. This ain't it, right? This is a fallen world to where they create false versions of minorities and women moving up in the world through the media and pop culture. But in reality, they're still following the mold that has been set out for them until they decide to take back their power. Until they decide to take back their power. I can hear you, kitty. And you are invited back into the matrix. Thank you. Thank you. And you are just in time, by the way, to say hello. Trying to make sure you get a good. So this kitty, by the way, probably a good shot here. This kitty came home here back in July of this year or last year, 2018. So it's about a half year old, and I have a couple toys that my mother sent me from New York City. I appreciate my mother doing that. And I think that cats can be good luck. And, one thing that you don't want to be on, it's the lights. Cat doesn't like the LED. Black cats are actually one of the least desired of the illusions and separations within cats. So there's superstition regarding cats, but why a black cat over other cats? I think in Egypt, maybe they had more of a appreciation for multiple types of cats. Maybe they had less cat supremacy or anti-vemism with regards to cats, but a lot of that has come out of Europe. But some of the things that we're taught